we actually have a smaller audience, it's even better. So please feel free to jump in and ask questions anytime. If you can just raise your hands on the Zoom chat, then I can pick you out. I'm very happy to let the conversation go in the direction that any of you want in terms of asking questions, gaining a bit more knowledge from my experience, and I'll share as much as I can as well. So feel free to ask questions. So for the next kind of like 30 to 40 minutes, I thought it would be worth telling you a bit about my experience at Brunel, and what I've done since Brunel and where I am today. Obviously, we started a company a few years ago, so I'll tell you a bit about what led to us starting the company, where we are today as a business, and some of the highs and lows as well. I think I've often seen entrepreneurship glorified, but it's not that amazing thing that everyone makes it out to be most of the time. And I think it's really important to have your eyes open when you walk into such an endeavor. So I will be telling you more of the lows than the highs, and some of the things I've learned along the way. And then we can have a Q&A as well. I'll open the floor up. Feel free to ask any question you want. There's nothing too simple or too easy. So just, have at it later on. So I studied at Brunel. I got into Brunel in 2005. I studied mathematics there. I wasn't the top in my class. I was always distracted with social life more than anything else, but I was one of those people that would cram towards exam times, and that kind of got me through the first 2-3 years. Started to get a bit nervous in end of my third year, so I studied a bit harder and managed to get decent results. Unfortunately, when I graduated, it was 2008 and the recession hit, and I was hoping to go into banking or financial services in one form or another. And when the recession hit, there was obviously no chance. No chance for me anyway at the time of going into banking. So I decided to apply to do a master's at Brunel to go into the mathematics course. Because I did enjoy my degree. I did enjoy maths a lot. I developed a love for it. And I thought, let me just stay in education a bit longer. I was very, very lucky at the time. We had a really forward-looking and warm head of maths at the time. And I had a chat with him, showed him some of my work, my thesis, my dissertations in undergrad, talked about some research topics. And thanks to him, I was quite lucky. I ended up, instead of doing a master's, I got a scholarship to do a PhD. So 2008 started my PhD in maths at Brunel. I also did a lot of the courses on the master's course at the same time. So I studied pretty much all the modules on the master's course because some of my friends who were in my year, they ended up doing the master's, and I didn't want to be left out in the things they were learning. So I crammed that in while I was doing my PhD. And yeah, I had a really good time there. Brunel was expanding at the time. They had just they built some of the new campuses, and it was a really, really good time. And I spent a lot of time not just studying. I was enjoying the social life there as much as I could as well. I think that's really important. And I was also, I think from that time, I was also quite entrepreneurial as well. I tried to do bits and pieces on the side. Like I took a part-time job in Windsor for about 6 months, and I'd go there 2-3 times a week to work. I also tried to do small jobs, like I did private tuition sometimes. I started trying to buy and sell things online. I even got into like online gambling, and trying to use my math skills to earn a little bit of extra money, and trying to figure out what does it mean to like create a business and to take risks. I think that's the most important thing that I was beginning to learn was what does it mean to take a risk? What can you gain? What can you lose? And how much? I wanted to figure out how much I was prepared to gamble. So yeah, my PhD journey was a lot of fun. I spent, I think, 4.5 to 5 years at Brunel doing my PhD. I took about 6 months out to look after my dad. He had a serious heart condition. So I had to take time out to look after him. But Brunel was really kind to me. The academics in the maths department were amazing. And I was quite thankful to graduate. I had a very quick and easy viva. I like to think I prepared in advance, and I didn't sleep for probably 3 months before that, to be honest. And then after the PhD, I knew that staying in academia at that time wasn't for me. I think when you're in more of an applied subject, when you're in academia, whether you graduate in a degree, in a BSc or an MSc or a PhD, when you're in more of an applied subject, it's easier to transition to industry, or it's easier to get funding to do research. But when you're in more of a pure subject, like I was doing pure maths and I loved it, but there's very little funding out there for pure mathematicians. In order to get funding, you usually have to fit your research proposals within frameworks where you have to show how this can be applied in the industry and sometimes partner with companies, etc. And with pure maths, it's very difficult to do that. So I thought to myself, I'd rather go into the industry, get a job, and maybe one day return back to academia as a pure mathematician without needing to actually change what I wanted to do in order to get funding. That was my thought process. And by the time 2013 rolled around, financial services was recovering. There was a paradigm shift in investment banking though because of the recession. So funding started to pour. Banks, because of regulatory pressure, banks had to spend more money on compliance and legal. So investment banking in particular saw a reduction in, I wouldn't say necessarily activity, but the size of teams in investment banking slowly started to reduce. And in fact, I think over 2016, 17, and 18, over those summers, thousands of people were let go from investment banks, predominantly around operations and even front office and traders. So when I was looking at when I was looking at my second attempt to get into banking, I wanted to go in as a quantitative analyst. And quantitative analysts are people who have very strong mathematics abilities, either engineering or maths or financial maths. And they have very good jobs in banking. A quant analyst in various areas of banking, they do very well. They're very solid jobs, very interesting, and they're kind of a staple of banking. So I trained as a quantitative analyst as well. And I didn't want to go for a graduate job because I thought if I go for a graduate recruitment scheme or a full-time job, I'm going to kind of be pigeonholed into one role and I'd have to do one thing. And one thing I learned about myself over the few years that I was doing my PhD was I don't just like to do one thing, I like to do many things. So I decided to go in as a consultant. And there's pros and cons to being a consultant, especially when you just graduated, which we can talk about later as well. But I took a bit of a risk. I decided to go in as a consultant. And I was quite lucky that I had met a couple of people and become friends with them in banking, and they had their own consulting firm. So through them and through others, I was able to get jobs for 2-3 months at a time doing quant work in banks. I also took that time. So that was, so 2013, 2014, Silicon Roundabout started to get popular. So if you don't know, Silicon Roundabout is the area near Old Street in central London where there's a lot of startup activity and there's technology hubs, loads of startups rent space, et cetera, et cetera. This actually started around that time, 2013, where Google opened something called Google Campus on Brunel Street. And as soon as they opened, I used to go, they had a cafe which was open to everybody. I used to go to the cafe every day, every single day for like 3 years. And at that time, it was so exciting in London because there wasn't really the startup tech vibe, 7-8 years ago. It wasn't there. As soon as Google opened their campus and that cafe, that used to get flooded with technology startups. Everybody wanting to create something. So for me, 2.5, 3 years I was there, and it was an amazing experience. I didn't create anything myself. I just got to know loads of aspiring entrepreneurs. I helped out in their startups. I learned how to do front-end coding. I learned about a ton of technology stuff that I didn't know about before. I had coded before that time as well, so I knew a number of languages: C++, Python, MATLAB, bunch of things. But really, they were more from a theoretical perspective and a quantitative analytics perspective. Whereas, helping these startups for a couple of years, I was able to see things applied directly to a business that they were trying to create. And of course, I saw some of them get seed funding, some of them got Series A. And for me, it was just a great learning experience. So I do the banking thing a couple of months, then I do the startup thing for a couple of months, and I do the banking thing, and I go back and forth like that for years. And I was really lucky actually, because I met some friends. I met some people who became friends who were in banking for 10 years longer than me, but they were also quite entrepreneurial, and we all got on really well. And we got to a point around 2014, then in 2015, we had an idea to do something in investment banking. And really, my friend, co-founder Avatar, he was the kind of brains behind it. And what we wanted to do was quite simply, and I don't want to use this word, it's quite overused, but we wanted to disrupt primary capital markets, which is an area of investment banking focused on the creation of new debt and new equity. And the thing with this specific area of banking is that it hasn't really changed for about 40, 50 years. There has been some technology and some process change over the last 50 years, which has improved things, but there are still a lot of inefficiencies there. So we thought to ourselves, why can't we create a company and go into that space and start bringing in ideas of automation, streamlining processes, automating processes, but not just automation within a specific area, like automation across different entities, different banks, different firms in primary capital markets, which wasn't something that was done at the time. Without going into the details too much, because it might bore people, the opportunity that we saw there, like, we still have the same vision today that we had 6 years ago, 6 years now. Same vision, but the way that we've proceeded over the last 6 years has changed. Like the stuff that we tried to do at the beginning, it definitely, so, you know, we tried to feel our way. And when you create a startup, you do something called look for product market fit. So you basically try to figure out what product you can build that's going to solve a problem in the market. So it's really important to notice, like to really specifically understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and then not be afraid to experiment with different ways to try and solve that. You're never going to get, I mean, let's say, unless you're a Mark Zuckerberg or a Jeff Bezos, you're never going to get the answer right from the beginning. Most entrepreneurs or most new companies take a long time to find the actual product that they're going to use to service the market. And same thing happened with us. You know, we spent about 2 years. Myself and one of my co-founders, well, lead founder Avatar, we started the company in 2016. So we fully left our jobs, started full-time on this in 2016, January. And to be honest, we didn't really hit on the core product until around 2019, early 2019. This was even after we raised a large seed round of investment. So it took a long time. You know, financial services, especially that area of investment banking, is like one of the last areas to be disrupted with technology as well. So 2016, going out to the banks, and we got into an accelerator which was very popular at the time. It was the Accenture FinTech Lab. They were, I think, one of the first technology accelerators in London for investment banking, for financial services generally. And through the Accenture FinTech Lab, we had a lot of exposure to investment banks, like the people in the investment banks who were decision makers and who would also be users of the technology. And we pitched our ideas to everybody. So over this space of the first 5-6 months, we just spent a lot of time pitching, refining the idea, building relationships with people. And when I look back at it, that was the really important thing. It was building the relationships, because a lot of the people that we built relationships with in 2016 and 2017, we know them today. You know, they are advocates for us. We're friends with them. We're on first name basis. We call them. And some of them even became clients. So I realized, looking back, developing the relationships was probably one of the best things that we did. And one of the things we've been strong at, because your idea will change over time. And you yourself as a person will change over time as well as you explore the entrepreneurial side of business. But those relationships are very important in banking or in any industry you go in. Building the relationships, getting to know people, sharing your ideas with them, and seeing what interests them as well. That's been really, really, really important for us. So 2016 was a really tough year. We were lucky. We got into the Accenture FinTech Lab. We also then got into the Microsoft Accelerator. Microsoft at the time were pushing very hard on incubators and accelerators. I think they've since closed the accelerator about 3 years ago, and they focused more on Series B investment onwards. But we were very lucky. We got into the Microsoft Accelerator, and that was a really, really valuable experience for us, because having been through the Accenture FinTech Lab, which was more of incubator slash accelerator, then going into a pure technology accelerator with Microsoft. We had a lot of exposure to Microsoft. We even had a meeting with Satya Nadella back then, and he gave us really useful advice. So the experience with Microsoft was awesome. They even helped us to try to win a contract with a large investment bank. Unfortunately, we got right to the end. We beat out all the large technology consulting firms, the big four, everybody else. And right at the end, the bank decided to go and develop things themselves. And what you'll find is a common story in banking. 5 years later, they haven't done it, and we have. But Microsoft are really important for supporting us as a startup. At that time, I think it was 4 of us co-founders, and we had 2 or 3 people that we were using part-time to actually win that bid, get to the last 9 yards. It was amazing. It was a great experience for us. And we ended up actually then getting into that bank's incubator. That was the JP Morgan Innovation Lab. So, sorry, JP Morgan, yeah, I forgot the name of it actually now. But yeah, that was really good as well. So 2016, really difficult, very interesting. It was still very exciting, but we were having lots of rejections and setbacks. So apart from that, I mean, the journey to get there, I think that episode itself occurred through 2016 to 2017. But the journey to get there was really, really tough. Very stressful, lots of sleepless nights. I actually had hair when we started, and most of it fell out that year. When, honestly, that December 2016, I went into overdraft on my bank account. That's how I literally ran out of all my money. And I had to move back home, cap in hand, to my parents. So, that's how bad it was. And I was overdraft for about 2 or 3 months on my account until I was able to save up a bit of money from doing private tuition. But we didn't stop doing the startup thing. We still pushed really hard. 2017 was really challenging, but we were lucky in 2016 that we tried to create as much as we could. And I think that was really important too. We tried to explore every single idea we had and develop relationships and push as hard as we could to find opportunities. And many of those opportunities actually came to fruition in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and even this year, which is really sometimes hard to believe. But when you think about the sales cycle in financial services, it's quite long. It's not just 6 months or a year. The sales cycle can be 3, 4, 5 years. So that's another thing to think about. When you get started as an entrepreneur and you're creating a company, and if you're trying to sell like a SaaS, we're basically a SaaS business, right? We're trying to sell technology to large firms. You have to consider the sales cycle. It's not like developing an app or a B2C business where you can push things out to customers on a daily basis. When you're selling to a large firm or a corporate, you have to really be cognizant of their cycle of investment and purchasing solutions. So 2016 really tough. 2017 was good. We actually got into like technology news in 2017 for some of the innovative things we did. We were quite active. We still are quite active in the blockchain space. Apart from the automation and the machine learning stuff that we work on, we've always experimented with the use of blockchain technology in investment banking. We got into the tech news because we issued the world's first tokenized securities, legally compliant as well. We also issued the world's first cryptocurrency denominated securities too. And we did that, as a very small startup. We were able to build some relationships, especially with a very large law firm, a Magic Circle law firm, who helped us quite a lot in 2017. But 2017, 2018 was really tough as well. But we were able to start generating interest in what we were doing. We were still kind of doing different proof of concepts. So we'd have a proof of concept with a bank somewhere, a proof of concept with a law firm, a proof of concept with different firms. And we'd be doing slightly different things in each one and kind of like trying to cobble together a solution and trialing it out. And we started to see what was working and what wasn't working. And we were kind of trying to refine the idea and still on this journey for product market fit. And we were obviously pitching. We were pitching for investment. The pitching didn't stop. It started in 2016 and it never stopped. Very, very challenging to get investment, especially for us at the time. We were not getting any luck with angels. We were not getting any luck with venture capital firms who very rarely invest in seed stage companies anyway. So we were entirely still self-funded and kind of limping along from a funding perspective. But because of the success we had in 2017, we garnered a lot of interest in 2018. We were able to then find a lead investor. A couple of firms became interested in us, and they ended up investing in us as well. And this kind of really started to take off in 2019. We raised, I think the investment round we closed was in 2019. We raised $20 million. And that's an unusually large seed round. Normally, even a Series A is normally not $20 million. So we took the route of raising as much as we could and using that money over a number of years, rather than kind of doing a very small seed round and then a larger Series A soon after that. A specific strategy that we took, we can talk about the pros and cons of that later on, because it's not all good. We got some notable investors in that round, and again, like, I can't emphasize enough the relationship building when you create a company and when you're an entrepreneur, because the investors who came into our round in 2019 were the relationships we were developing in 2016 and 2017. Two large law firms invested in us, Alumni Overy and Linklaters. These were relationships we developed over a number of years. The London Stock Exchange invested in us as well. Again, relationships that took years to develop. Our lead investor was somebody that we met at the beginning of 2016. He's a prolific angel investor, a co-founder of a large venture capital firm in the UK. And with the relationship and the guidance from him, we were able to then bring him through as a lead investor and our chairman, and to bring the other companies along the journey with us as well. So I can't emphasize enough the kind of the relationship development. And then also from a client perspective, it's very similar, right? Getting firms and people to invest in you is about building trust, showing them a vision, showing them that you have the ability to find a solution. Because when people invest in you early on, especially experienced people, they know you don't have a solution ready for the market. They know it, and so do you. What they're looking for when they invest in you is they're looking at who the co-founders are, whether you guys have skills, and whether you guys are persistent and you're going to find a solution. That's what they invest in. They invest in you as people. And that's something that we learned along the journey. And then that evolves over time. As you grow and you become a larger company, you raise more funding later on. Then those companies, your next round of investment, your Series A, Series B, they start to care less about you as founders and more about the business and the revenue. So there's a shift there, and you have to evolve as a founder, as an entrepreneur. I think it's also really important for you all to realize that you need to evolve as your company evolves as well. The thing you create today is not going to be the same thing as it is next year or the year after, and you need to change as well. You can't be the same person today. You have to really evolve and mature and learn how to become a leader, learn how to grow a company, and learn how to manage people. Not everybody has those skills. Unless you've been working in a company for 5, 10, 15 years, and you've gone through the career progression where you've been a junior person and you become mid-level, you've learned how to be a manager, et cetera, and then you start a company. Yeah, you'll have skills. You'll understand how to manage people and grow teams. But when you're like me, starting a company a couple of years out of uni, you don't have management experience. You don't know how to grow a team. You don't understand these things. And so when you create a company, you need to grow and you need to learn as well. It's not just about being a creative person and an entrepreneur. It's about developing every aspect of your skills and abilities over a number of years and evolving and growing as the company does as well. So that was a hard lesson for all of us as well. And it's meant that on the positive side, it's meant that there's been a lot of personal growth over the last 5, 6 years. I don't think I could have experienced this kind of growth had I gone into banking full time, or even, to be honest, any full-time job. But that's me personally. Everyone's different. And when you have an idea to start a company, don't think that creating a startup is always exciting. Most of the time, it's not. It can be exciting at the beginning, but then life hits you in the face, right? You start to realize you don't have much income. You need to put money into the company. You need to hire people, get investment, work a lot. You don't have large teams to do work for you. You need to do all the work. And so, you go from doing a 9 to 5 job to doing a 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. job. And that's pretty much how it is, really. And it's something that you have to, as you grow and you get more people in and you train them, you can start to scale back your hours. But that takes years. I'm still trying to figure that one out myself. And we have over 60 people in the company now. So yeah, it's something I went on a bit of a tangent, but that was just something that was on my list of notes. I've got like a bullet point list here, and I thought to hit that one quickly. So yeah, getting the investment was a turning point for us as well. We suddenly went from being a startup doing innovative stuff to being a startup that needs to become a mature company very quickly. So it wasn't just a transition of a couple of years. It was a sudden, like, bang, the reality hit us. We've raised a lot of money. We've got some very large companies who are stakeholders in us now, and they're on our board as well. Their expectations, we realized afterwards, were quite different to what we thought they would be. We thought that they understood that we were a small, agile startup and we do loads of innovative things. Suddenly, it dawned upon us that they were expecting us to be a mature company very quickly, and we weren't there. So 2019, while we were able to find product market fit and then start to consolidate all the things we had been working on into one product, 2019 and 2020 was a huge challenge for us because we had to mature as people and learn how to become managers and grow teams. We had to then manage expectations of our investors and clients who were large corporates, large companies, not really expecting, not expecting us to just be innovative all the time, but actually expecting a mature product from us at a time when we weren't ready to give that. And so we had to kind of shift and change very quickly in the space of a year and a half, which we've been doing over 2020 as well. So now we're getting to the stage in 2021 where we're becoming that mature company that can deliver an enterprise-grade solution, like a product, a technology that a very large company can use on a daily basis. But we weren't there in 2019, and that's one of the things I want to highlight. Like, bear that in mind when you're creating a company, you're getting investment. It's not always about going there and getting the largest amount possible from the largest investors you can find. It's also about managing expectations of who's going to invest and making sure that you kind of have a roadmap of what you need to do over the next few years, and that's a roadmap that they understand as well. It's really important to have investors who understand you and who you understand, and that's something we could have done better on hindsight, but it's something we're rectifying now. So again, as a startup, you can change things very quickly. You're not just stuck in your way perpetually. You can change really quickly, unlike a corporate. And it's something that we've been really good at, is kind of evolving and changing and adapting as and when we needed to. And I think that's the hallmark of good entrepreneurs as well, is being able to adapt quickly, but also understanding when you need to slow down as well. Pretty bad advice, I'm sorry to say that, but it is something which is quite important, I think, to emphasize. Then I think, the journey that we're on now, we're now trying to grow the company. We're trying to capitalize on everything that we've been doing. We've got some very large clients. We're building our product out. We are going for another funding round as well. So we're always talking to investors. It's another thing about being an entrepreneur. You never stop trying to get investment. As soon as you close an investment round, your next one starts. And especially if any of you take on the role of the CEO in your company, you are always going to be looking for investment. So I'm just forewarning you right now, your investment journey never stops. I'm quite lucky that Abtar took that job, and he's doing a very good job at it, but he's perpetually looking for investment, and we're just supporting his investment discussions at the moment. But yeah, don't underestimate the journey for investment. It's a very difficult one, very long, and it's very complex. It's not easy. It does require a lot of openness with potential investors, sharing ideas, showing a vision, and taking risks. And don't forget, like, if you ever get into an area where you need to sell technology to a large company or a corporate, they can't move quickly. So don't worry too much about sharing ideas and companies stealing ideas. They can't move quick. The example of JP Morgan is a good one. It's been 4 years. They didn't do what they said they would do, and that's quite common in banking. So highs and lows. The highs have been the things that I've learned along the way. It's been really, really interesting. I've had to do so many different roles in my company over the last 5 years. When you create a company, a title doesn't really matter. You have to give yourself a title because others need to see that you have a title, right? Especially when you're in a kind of hierarchical industry like banking. Everyone looks at a title and then they assess your seniority in a firm by your title, and they try to communicate with you on that level. So we gave ourselves titles, and those titles have evolved over the last 5 years. But really, when you create a company, you just need to take on whatever needs to be done. It doesn't really matter about the title when you're looking at each other and internally. And I've been really, really thankful that I've been able to do so many different things in the company, and things that I never expected I would ever do. And a lot of them didn't work, and a lot of them did work. And I've been quite lucky that thankfully nothing went too badly from the things that I tried to do, and a lot of things went right. And that's another upside with creating a company. If you're prepared for putting the hard work and the time in and trying new things and getting stuck in and having a positive mental attitude, you will develop a lot of skills that you wouldn't develop otherwise in a steady job. And you will have experiences that will last you a lifetime. I can guarantee you that. Although there will be a lot of lows as well. Like I was saying earlier, lack of sleep, long working hours, lots of stress. But again, that's part and parcel of being an entrepreneur. I don't think you can be a successful entrepreneur without taking on a lot of stress and learning how to manage that stress. I think that's also been one of the learning points for me over the last 5 years, is learning how to cope with stress. If you can learn how to cope with stress very early on, you'll be successful. I guarantee that. But if you let stress get the better of you, more often than not, it's going to affect your mood, it's going to affect your productivity, and it's going to affect the way that you interact with your colleagues and your clients. When you're in a large firm or an established company, stress levels are usually lower. Okay, it depends on what position you are. Maybe I shouldn't make that statement, but you have to work long hours and all that, but you can make a mistake and you can be forgiven. You'll have other people around you to help pick up the pieces, and you can recover. When you're a small company and you're a startup and you're a co-founder and your face is at the fire, you make a mistake, it could be costly for you if you make a mistake in your business and if you make a mistake with clients. So while you can fix things very quickly, quicker than you could maybe in a large company, mistakes are less forgiving in a startup. So very important to manage your stress, to learn how to cope with stress, and to do whatever you need to do that. Some of the other lows, I think very important to have the right investors on board as well, and the right board members. Investors and board members can literally make or break you. Make sure your investors are aligned with you, and you have a good relationship with them. They need to kind of almost be friends, but also impartial enough to give you a good guidance and a steer on how you might be able to add value to them as shareholders, especially your board members. I think there can often be an attraction to get like high-profile companies investing in you and get high-profile board members, because that adds credibility to your startup. They open up doors, they have connections, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, if those people are not from entrepreneurial backgrounds, that could actually have a detrimental effect on you. So like I was talking earlier about managing expectations, when you have large companies investing in you at an early stage, they have expectations of things that you may not be ready to give them for a couple of years. It's the same thing with getting board members on who don't understand the entrepreneurial journey and have not created companies before. No matter how experienced they are, how kind and how good they are and how intelligent, if they've not been through that journey before, their lens is going to be very different from yours. And that's just a fact. There's no getting around it. They could be sympathetic. They could be really good at providing guidance, but they will never have been in your shoes. And at the end of the day, you may need to make decisions that they won't like or understand, and then you'll have to deal with that conflict. So try to get investors and board members who understand the journey, who have been there and done that, and find a balance. You don't want people who are all just entrepreneurs. You want a healthy balance in your board, a healthy balance in your investors, whether they're angel investors or VCs or whatever it is. Healthy balance is always really important. Don't go one way or the other. And make sure you keep again, I'm going to say this word again, make sure you keep a very good relationship with everyone. One of the other things I learned in creating a company was I needed to be really good at translating. When I say translating, I needed to be really good at talking a different language to different types of people, clients, board members, investors. Everyone has a different level of understanding to yours, and you're in the middle because you're the one who's created a company. You are the center of attention. People have invested in you. They want to work with you, but everyone has a different perspective on life, on business. They understand things in a different way. Their backgrounds and experiences are different. You need to become kind of like a translator. You need to understand what everyone's talking about, what they're all saying, what they're all thinking, they're understanding, what their motivations are, where their goals are, what they want to achieve in their roles, what they want to achieve for their companies. And you need to align everything with what you're doing as well. And that is really complicated. I'm still trying to figure out how to do that, to be honest. It's not like something that we've clocked. It's a journey that you will have to go on for a long time. And some of the most successful people in technology, particularly who have created companies, have been the ones who have been really good at bridging the communication gap with many different types of stakeholders, both internally and externally with customers. So that's a really important skill to develop as soon as you can. Besides the thing about managing stress and handling a heavy workload, that thing about communication and building a relationship with everyone is really, really important. Never burn a bridge. You never know when you might need to come back to that bridge. And always try to put yourself in the shoes of the people you're talking to, because I've often been in conversations with clients, and I feel very ashamed to say this, with clients and investors, and it's become confrontational because I've got a view, they've got a view, and we're not meeting in the middle. We're not finding a common level of understanding. But when we're able to find that common level of understanding, we're actually able to then see things from each other's perspective. And sometimes we learn a lot. We learn a lot of new things. I've learned a lot. I had a meeting with some of our board members today, and I tried to explain something to them. And after a back and forth, they understood what I was saying. I understood what they were saying. And actually, I realized something new that I didn't realize before. And it gave me a different perspective on some information I was presenting them. And that is like very valuable. It's a very valuable thing, a very valuable skill to develop, a very valuable way to look at engaging with customers and people internally. And I can't emphasize enough how important that is. So I'll stop rambling on about that. Question from Mike: how do you personally deal with stress? Well, Mike, I go into the corner of my flat and I cry for an hour, and then I go and sleep. But apart from that, I like to exercise. I exercise a lot. I was in the gym every day when I was at Brunel for years, and I still do that even during lockdown. So I love exercising. It's my form of meditation. I like meditation too. I have a lot of friends who meditate regularly, and they schedule time in their day, morning or night or lunchtime or even multiple times a day, and they go and they focus on meditating, and it works for them. So I like exercising. Some of my close friends meditate regularly. I love walking. I unfortunately don't walk as much as I used to do, but walking and listening to podcasts is one of the best forms of meditation I can possibly do, because I learn something and I'm experiencing nature. I go for a walk in a park or something, take your mind off it. I'm a big fan of exercising and walking and letting your mind drift. How else do I handle stress? I just do things that I like. I like gaming. I'm a big nerd. I love maths still. I read papers, even though I've not done anything mathematically academic for a while. I love reading papers. I like playing games just to take my mind off things. I listen to music. To be honest, do whatever you want to do to take your mind off things, and don't ever be afraid to just sit there and not do anything. Sometimes I just sit and stare into my screen for like an hour, just not doing anything. But in the background, my mind is processing stuff, and that downtime is really important. You don't need to be busy. Something I've learned as well over the last few years is I don't need to be busy all the time. I don't have to be busy from morning to night, constantly doing something. the time is best spent when it's high quality and you're focusing on work or you're focusing on relaxing. I also look at it from this perspective. I have so much in my tank for the week, right? And every day I'm drawing down some amount from my tank. If I deplete my tank too early in the week, I'm just going to go negative too quickly. So I try to deplete not too much, try to top it up every day and go like this throughout the week. And then on a Friday night, I crash for like 14 hours. Yeah, try to sort of measure out your workload, and don't be afraid to throw yourself into work as well when you're creating a company. Do what you need to do because you'll find a balance over time. Just do what you need to do. Everyone's different as well, but manage your stress levels as quickly as you can. Is there any social impact that your company is doing in terms of CSR? What do you mean by CSR? I forgot what that stands for.
Corporate social responsibility, like few
Okay.
firms. So I was hoping if your firm has started looking into that direction yet.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, CSR is really important. What we're doing is, like, in terms of our business itself, I like to think that it's a social cause in some ways. Yes, we're actually the only company doing what we do in investment banking. And so, but what we're doing also is it's partly a democratization of how investment banking operates and works. So I hope in the medium to long term that if our business continues to grow and we actually achieve new levels of success, I hope that this will actually have a very strong social impact on financial services globally. We also on the side spend a lot of time working on microfinance. I have a live project in Pakistan at the moment, which I spend about 30 minutes every day on, which is around microfinancing. I did a project in India as well for about 1.5 years. So, myself and my co-founders are very passionate about microfinance in particular and banking the unbanked as well. So it's something that we keep in touch with regularly, and we hope our company will converge onto that area at some point in the next few years too. If not Nivaura, there may be another one that we start after that. So I hope that answered the question. What are some of your regrets or bad choices that you've made on your career path, and how are you able to rise above it? With only 15 minutes left, I can't cover all of them. I probably need 2 or 3 days, to be honest. They're mostly bad choices. I'll try to pick out some of them. Bad choice. I think one of my regrets is I don't have many regrets, if I'm being really honest with you. I have some regrets in terms of things I could have done slightly differently, but generally I've thrown myself into everything. The reason why I've thrown myself into everything is because I most of the time feel like I don't have much to lose. I remember when I was doing my PhD in the now demolished John Crank building, I had a wall, like a pinboard wall behind my computer, and I used to put up like all these motivational quotes along the wall. And I'd repeat stuff to myself every day. I used to do, I still do it today, and I have done for years. Regularly reciting things to myself, reading out quotes, stuff like that, just things that really motivate me and keep me engaged and positive. And I used to have one quote on my wall, which was by Tony Robbins, when he said, there's many iterations of this quote, right? But this particular one I liked. He said, if you want to take the island, you have to burn your boats. And what he was referring to is if you're going to war and you're going to take an island and take a piece of land, the way you'll be most successful is by landing there and then burning any chance you have of going backwards, because then you'll be the most motivated to achieve that goal. And because I repeated that to myself so many times during my PhD, when I left, that was just ingrained in me, was just to take a leap every single time, don't look back, but take that leap knowing that it's a risk. I think that's really important as well. Don't just go into something blindly, like I'm going to go and do that thing. Assess every option you have. And if you're going to take a risk on something, take that risk knowing what the outcome could be, knowing that the outcome is likely going to be failure because you're taking a really high risk. And that's why I've taken that approach, and I have very few regrets, if I'm being honest. In terms of things going badly, loads of things have gone badly. when you're in a high risk, when you're taking high risk, you have to be prepared that most of the time things won't turn out right. Bad choices, I think. I went into the startup full time with my co-founder. Looking back, I would have probably should have kept working part time or had a contracting role to bring in some income and do the startup thing on the side, and then let that slowly take over and then leave my job. I didn't have much savings, right? I was always part-time banking, part-time startup, spending my money on education. I always invested back in myself, whatever I had. So I had nothing saved up really. And I think looking back, one of the things that I would maybe do differently would be just working a bit longer part-time and then doing the startup part-time just to keep me going for a bit longer, maybe 6 months or a year longer, without going into overdraft in my bank account. So I think that's probably one bad thing. I think another one is maybe growing too quickly without the necessary skills to manage a larger company. That's been a hard lesson for me as well. I've had to spend a lot of time last year learning how to manage and learning how to manage a team and keep them motivated. That was something that I was very ill-equipped for in 2017, 2018, and 2019, and it had a detrimental effect on our company and on people in the company as well. And that's something which I don't necessarily regret, but I feel very bad about. And over last year, I worked really hard on it. I spent many, many hours studying and training and doing things last year to bring my level of ability in management up to, I hope, a decent level now. And that's shown on how the business has grown as well over the last year, and on the happiness of my teams now. I now run product in our company, so I have a reasonably sized team, which is growing as well. And so it's really important it's very important for me and for the company that I'm able to manage people and keep them happy and motivated and show them where their hard work is going into building the company. So I think that's probably been the other thing that I'd point out as one of the things that I didn't do really well at all was managing people, and I had to learn that. And you don't learn how to manage unless you go through life in a well-established company for a few years. So it's something I had to pick up. How difficult is it to get technical qualified personals to help you in what you do? How difficult is it to get technically qualified people to help you? It's not difficult. There's loads of technical people in the world. I think what's difficult in general, and so I'll generalize this, not just technical, but subject matter experts and experienced people. There's loads of them around the world. The hard thing is getting them to help you when you're a startup and you have no money, because either they don't want to help you if you don't have money, or they want lots of equity in order to help you. And that's really difficult, I have to be honest. Some of the people that I am really good friends with now and who I consider to be people of high integrity are the ones who gave me free advice and free help when I needed it. I reached out to a number of people who I built relationships over the years with in banking. And literally when I had challenges or when I had problems or questions, or even if I wanted introductions, I'd ask them for something and they'd do it without even asking me for anything in return. Just did it. And those are the people I hold in high esteem. They're very hard to find. And I only found them by reaching out to loads of people and figuring out who wanted money and equity and who were very happy to help. So it's a difficult thing to do. I think you have to just talk to people, network, build relationships, understand people's incentives, and figure out yourself what you're willing to give in order to get that expertise, either advice or those actual people in your company. One thing I would say is don't give away equity too early. Be very careful with your equity. I would even say be borderline stingy with it. If you're going to give equity away to anyone, either options or equity, pinpoint exactly where you're going to get a return on that equity. So if you're giving away any amount, pinpoint exactly, or at least to a reasonably high degree of confidence, how you're going to get a return on the investment, on the equity that you're giving away. I cannot stress that enough. And I'm happy to talk about that again separately with people. I like that sentence, managing stress is the key to success. Thanks for that, no problem. Thank you so much. Impressed to know about your firm. Thank you very much. Any advice for early learning of management teams, looking back for others? Any advice for early learning of management teams? Mike, could you elaborate on that question, please? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's missing the word of. You said that you came to managing your teams late and it caused trauma, or it wasn't optimal. Looking back, have you any advice for people listening who are starting on their journeys, how to weave that into their personal development?
Yeah. I mean, this is actually a common thing. So everything I'm saying, like these challenges, they're very common for startups. It's not like we experienced it the first time. It's so common, and no matter how many times you read about it, because I read tons of books and I went to loads of talks by entrepreneurs, and I've been through lots of talks and loads of networks through Google and Microsoft and loads of large companies. No matter how many times you hear it, when you go through it, it's always a different story. So in some ways it's hard to prepare, but in other ways, being in touch with problems that other entrepreneurs have and keeping a mental list in your head, it's useful, because when you start to encounter those, you will have a process for dealing with it already, and you can identify, okay, I'm having a problem here. I know loads of other people have had that problem. Let me try and figure out now how to solve it. And I need to do something about this quickly. And here are some resources I can look into. So I'd say building out a mental map, or even a physical map if you want, of things that you can do to address a problem generally is important. Now, in terms of the specific thing about management, again, a common challenge of startups. When you create a company and you are figuring out product market fit, you're building relationships with potential customers, you're building relationships with potential collaborators and investors. You're also gaining knowledge, right? You're talking to the customer on a daily basis. You are using the ideas that you bounce off them and the feedback they give you. You're using that to refine your idea and to build your product and to come up with your product ideas and build things, right? So you're there every day. Your face is to the fire. When you start to hire people to work in your company, you then need to learn how to train them, because you will have you will most likely be a high performer by that time, to be honest. If you're at the stage where you're able to hire people, you've got revenue or you've got investment, you will likely be a high performer in your company and a subject matter expert. You will have the relationships, you'll have the knowledge, you'll be always busy working, right? And you'll be working long hours. What you need to realize is when you hire people, don't expect the same thing from them, because they're not your founder or co-founder. Their motivations are not the same as yours. They are your employee. They can't work morning to night. I mean, there is some sacrifice that you expect people to make coming into a startup, right? You expect people to spend a bit longer working and to learn and to contribute. That's part of the excitement and the thing you get back from being in a startup is you learn a lot. Right? I'm also talking to all of you as if you may go and work for a startup one day at varying stages of the startup's life. You will go there and learn a lot very quickly, but you will only learn a lot if you throw yourself into it. If you go to a startup expecting to have the same structure as a company or a corporate, you're not going to be successful there, and you'll have a very bad time. But if you go to a startup, just throw yourself in there, you're going to love it. One thing I can tell you, so Jeff Bezos recently resigned as Amazon CEO, and somebody, I forgot the gentleman's name, but somebody else took over as CEO. He was one of the first joiners of Amazon when they were a startup. And he gave a talk, I think it was last year or maybe a couple of years ago. And in his talk, he basically said, after he graduated, he just wanted to work at Amazon because he liked Jeff Bezos. And he tried many, many times to get into Amazon. And when he got in, he said he didn't care what he did. He just did whatever needed to be done. Even if it was making coffees, he was doing that. He was doing anything he could do and taking on as much work as he could do because he just wanted the experience and he wanted to learn. That was his attitude. He's now the CEO of Amazon. And there's a lesson there for you starting a company, hiring people, or thinking of joining a startup. There's a particular attitude to look for in people. And if you don't find the right attitude in those people, it's going to be a mismatch, and vice versa. So hiring the right people, making sure they're motivated, making sure they understand what they're getting into when they come into the startup. And also you need to learn how to train them. They are not going to perform like you. They need to learn. They need to learn your business. They have to learn the technology. They're coming to your company because they want to learn from you. It's something which I didn't really a couple of years ago, I didn't think anybody could learn anything from me because I didn't think I had much to teach. I was just doing what I needed to do on a daily basis and learning myself. And I still am learning even more today than I was 3 or 4 years ago. And the one thing I failed to really understand is I needed to spend time with our staff, people that we were hiring, people who were taking a risk to join us, and teach them and train them and be friends with them. And I didn't do that, right? And I learned the hard way. As you grow as a startup, you need to invest in your people. Your time, you have to invest your time. There's nothing else you can invest because they're joining your company to work with you. So you have to invest your time. You have to also appreciate that they're not going to perform to the same level as you because they can't. They're not you. They didn't create your company. You did. You have to train them and you have to get them to, you have to help them to become high performers in their way and in a way that also fits the company. It's a common challenge for startups. As a company grows, performance levels reduce. And then you have to start investing more and more time on training and creating a good culture and a good atmosphere. It's something that we've been learning over the last 2 years. So that I would say is, you're a founder, learn how to manage. There's loads of material out there about management. Read it, manage your stress. Most importantly, don't expect your staff to be like you because they're not. Understand who they are, understand their motivations, and give them time and give them space to be honest with you, give them space to fail and support them. That's what you need to do for them, because put yourself in their shoes. You would want that in return. If you were going into a startup, you wouldn't want to be in an environment where you had to work long hours, you didn't get much time with the founders, you weren't being trained enough, and you're just kind of flying blind half the time. Don't let that happen. That's the one thing I would say. I guess we're running out of time, but do we